Okay, so it's 3 p.m. on East Coast. I'm going to start. Thank you everyone for joining. Just so you know, this meeting is being recorded. So whatever you put in the chat, it's going to be recorded. So if you don't want that, you might want to exit the meeting because we'll put it up in our YouTube channel. So this is our second meeting for the month, as you can see on the slide deck. And we have a Twitter handle, a website, and an email address also. So sorry, cannot move my slides. Take that off. Sorry about that. Oh. Yeah, if you have any suggestion, you have any feedback, send us email at dba-vug@outlook.com, and then we do monitor that email address, and then I'll get back to you. And we do meet on the second Wednesday on the East Coast, noon time, and fourth Wednesday like today, at the noon West Coast, just to be fair to our friends on the other side. And we do take breaks twice a year, one for Thanksgiving and one for Christmas. And we do have a YouTube channel. So if you want to see the previous recording and today's meetings recording for, if you want to watch it again, do subscribe. If you go to YouTube and search for DBA-VUG, you'll find it, or you can scan this QR code. And I'll also put the link in the chat later on. This is a 6-part series that a few of us, including Monica and myself, we did at the past summit last year. And we are doing it, started in March, and we'll be doing it till May. And we'll be recording all 6 and put it in our YouTube channel. So there are more speakers coming up as part of this series. And we are also pretty much booked for the whole year. As you can see, if you go to our meetup page, you will see the other speakers coming up for the whole year. And past summit is November 4th, so look it up. I don't have a discount code yet. As soon as I get it, I'll share with you, which is November 4th, 5th, and 6th this year in Seattle. And it will be in person only. These are some other SQL Saturday and Data Saturdays that runs all over the world. They are free one-day conferences. So go to sqlsaturday.com or datasaturdays.com. You can check that out. And there are a couple of other events I put in between. Those are VS Live and Data Sally, and those are also some of those are also listed in those websites. And I'm not going to take any more time. Thank you, Monica, for your time. And I will stop talking and hand over to Monica. And before I do that, by the time Monica set it up, I'm just going to make few housekeeping announcement that you cannot unmute yourself or you cannot turn on your camera. So if you want to ask a question, put in the chat. I will read it back to Monica when Monica has break in between or towards the end. Because we have a large crowd, so we cannot allow you to unmute because it just get a little bit chaotic. But I will be monitoring your questions and I'll make sure that I read those back at the end or when Monica has breaks in between. So I'm going to keep quiet, take my camera off, and let Monica take over.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining this afternoon. Tayeb, I appreciate your time and you guys inviting me once again to present for you. This is going to be my performance tuning on Azure SQL Database talk. We're going to talk about a lot of the monitoring piece, how to find the stuff that you need in order to tune, and a couple other things that will help you get set up to be able to monitor and tune your environment inside Azure SQL Database. So those who don't know me, Monica Rathbun, I'm a consultant. I've been doing performance tuning for 20 some odd years. It's the thing I'm really excited about. So I love being able to share these things. I am known as SQL Espresso online. Everyone who knows me knows you can get to my website. I'm on all socials as SQL Espresso. The reason why I am SQL Espresso is, as you can see, I talk really fast and I live and breathe with the help of espresso on a daily basis. So unfortunately, everyone says Monica talks too fast. I wish she would slow down. That's not something that's in my future. I try and try and try. So my apologies if I talk too fast. One good thing is that this will be on YouTube and you can slow it down and then rewatch anything that you may miss due to my unfortunate speed that I can't help. So anyways, you can reach me that way. I always like to introduce today's guests because they will inevitably show up. And Mr. Theo is already on my desk. I don't know if you've seen him walk by, but he's here. So expect him to come by, ignore them, and we will carry on as we can. They're very destructive on my desk all the time. So let's get started. As Tayob said, it is a large group today. We are online, and I do know everybody is working, so I'm going to try my best to keep it in the confines of the 60 minutes. There are some very new things that have been introduced inside Azure SQL Database and the portal that I'm going to try to add to this deck today. So I'm really hoping I'm going to stay within the time frame. If not, Tayob already has my slide deck. He will post it for you guys to be able to get to. And if you have any questions following this, you guys know how to get a hold of me. I'm very willing to answer questions or get one-on-one and show you some demos if we don't get a chance to do so. So what we're going to talk about is the very basics. What's Azure SQL Database? How do we monitor it? Where do you find your query information? Where do you find all the metrics that are important to us as a database analyst, consultant, DBA, developer? Where can I find what I need to find? What's different about it on-prem versus in the cloud, and how do I find those same metrics? What it is we need to analyze. It's all the same. You just need to know where to find it and how to configure it. There is some diagnose and solve things that are built into the portal now. That will come with Copilot even more as we move forward. But right now, there is some avenues for you to go to and find out how to troubleshoot and where to get that information easily within the portal, especially those that are accidental DBAs or somehow the cloud has fallen into your lap and you have to actually go and look. We will look at some of the automatic tuning that you can set up inside the cloud to try to help you do some of those proactive performance tuning things. I will talk about what I like and what I don't like and what you should definitely turn off as you move forward, just to make sure you're just not creating and deleting indexes on the fly because it's trying to tell you what to do and what to take advantage of and what not. And then if demos allow, that's what I'm trying to get to. We will get to the portal. I will show you my setup. I will show you where to find stuff. I do have a lot of screenshots inside my deck. That way, if you can't get to the portal and or we don't get through all of the demos, you at least see everything within a screenshot as we go through it. So hopefully that will cover everything you expect. And let's go ahead and dive in so we can get through this as we go. So what is Azure SQL Database? What about it is different? It is just a fully managed cloud database. They take care of your backups. It runs on their computing platform. So you are on Azure and Microsoft's hardware itself. That is, the database management is done without the database DBA's involvement. So your backups, your patching, things like that, all is taken care of by Azure behind the scenes. There's some automatic tuning in there. So there's some things that get tuned, but not everything. So there's still a job out there for DBAs when it comes to Azure SQL Database. There's things we need to do to maintain our workload besides just having it on their hardware and choosing the proper tiers for it to go on and the sizing that we're going to need for our workloads. There's still tuning and monitoring and all the normal stuff that we are required to do as DBAs to ensure the best performance in our environment. This is not a avenue in which management can say, hey, we've gone to the cloud, have everything set up, our backups are there, we know we can recover, we can do point in time recover, so therefore we no longer need our DBA teams. And they fire them, and then all of a sudden other people who aren't aware of what SQL Server does and how it works are now in charge of that environment. I have seen that happen. I have seen what happens after that has occurred. So this is still something that has to be taken care of and monitored just like any other database. Just because you're on their hardware doesn't take away from that. You don't have access to TempDB to tune. That's a big difference. There are some DMVs that we can no longer get to. We can't do things like free proc cache or a lot of DBCC commands are taken away from us. It's not like you want a free proc cache and prod anyways, but that's just an example of things that we can't run when it comes to going into Azure SQL Database. There is still some certain configurations that you are in charge of. You still need to work with your max DOP. You need to work with optimizing your ad hoc queries. things like that that you still go through when you want to configure your environment for your workloads. Those things still apply. You just need to go through and make sure you are configuring it appropriately for your cloud offering. It's all still the same. It's just on their hardware. So tuning components when it gets into the cloud, there's a big picture that you have to look at. Azure metrics, they offer monitoring and dashboarding, which we will talk about. It will allow you to see your CPU, your IO throughput, look at your fleet, the entire fleet in one section. There's lots of different things we can do when it comes to finding those metrics and how to customize those into something that's meaningful to you. So we will go through that. We will go through my favorite part, which is the query performance insights. That's going to use Query Store, just like we are aware of it on-prem and we've used in our other environments. It is on by default in the newer versions of Azure SQL Database. And as you go into 2022 of SQL Server, you will start to see Query Store automatically in there. That is extremely important for us to be able to find those queries that are causing issues inside our environment. We'll take a look at that. We're going to look at Azure SQL Analytics. That is something that is a big piece that DBAs tend to miss. That allows us to get our performance statistics. That gives us things like deadlocks and blocking and all the pieces that we feel like sometimes we're missing when we go to the cloud and we're just looking in the portal. There is some things you have to configure in order to get that information and make it useful to you. And then they introduced something brand new. I heard about it just a couple months ago, Database Watcher. So that is something that's going to be able to allow us to monitor and see and performance tune our entire fleet of Azure SQL databases and VMs, things like that, going forward. We are not going to demo that today. To set that up is quite a lot of work. I've tried. There's some integral things that you actually have to get through in order to get it to do what you want it to do. So we're not going to actually demo that, but I am going to show you some screenshots and tell you some more about that. Hopefully I'll come up with a series that will include that in the near future. So hopefully you know about some of these things. Some of it will be review, some of it will be new. Hopefully you'll walk away with something you're able to use. So let's take a look at the first thing. We're going to go through here, and like I said, we're going to bring you into the portal, but first we're going to walk through what's in here and how you find the information. So if you look on metrics, you're going to find this on the blade for your Azure SQL database. You're getting into databases first. You find your Azure SQL database, and we know in order to performance tune, we have to monitor and know our workloads. That's nothing different in the cloud. So to find this, you're going to go onto your SQL database and you're going to go to the blade on your left-hand side called monitoring. Under that, you will see alerts, metrics, and diagnostic settings as well as logs. We'll talk about those last two here in a minute. But it's very easy to set up. It's a lot of drag and drop and add. We can add a metric such like CPU percentage, data IO percentage. I've got some deadlock information here. I've got some processes counts that are in here. You can pick each one of these metrics for your specific database that we are on at the moment and looked at in the portal. You can actually change the time configuration here and put it to a local time, to UTC time. I can look at it for a window in time. I can go back in time and take a look at some things up to 45 days. So this is a big gotcha for me. When I went to the cloud with a client, very new to Azure SQL Database, we wanted to go ahead and get metrics on all of them and compare what it was like on-prem to what it was in the cloud. We decided we wanted to look at 2 months worth, not knowing that after 45 days, things disappeared. So as we started to benchmark and make improvements, we wanted to see over the 2-month time span how we got better. Unfortunately, the 45-day limit got us. So that's a gotcha that I like to make you aware. It will keep a 45-day history only, and you can go back again and check through this local time area. It's a drop down that will give you a window that you want to be able to look at, UTC, the week, the month, the hour, and it will populate all of the different metrics that you've added here. You can filter it, you can share it, and you can pin it to a dashboard. Pinning it to a dashboard is very good when you're trying to get an overall view for like management, or you want one singular place where your team can look at all of your metrics for each one of your SQL databases. You can do it here, and then you can publish the dashboard out and give links to your team to have them see that shareable dashboard and all the same metrics, such as the CPU and the IO, et cetera, in one place. So that's very handy. You can drill down into the logs. You can change the charts. All very easy. It's the normal stuff that you would expect to see when you start monitoring your live workload coming through. Now, what do you do with that? Everybody wants to be able to alert. So obviously inside Azure SQL Database, we can alert in the portal as well. So when you have high CPU, you can see here I have one on CPU over 80%. You can do that. You can enable it. You can give it a little more information here on set the severity. You can do warnings, informational. It gives you a great deal of information that you can go and search and have pre-done alerting that you can add in here. It can send SSMS, it can do emails, voices. You could set up your action groups and who am I going to email and set up groups to where we're emailing that to. So everything you would want to have on-prem that we've had to build ourselves or use a secondary client for when it comes to alerting, or we've had to use Azure SQL Agent to do this, we have that availability still for you to be able to tune and find anything that's going wrong with your environment. So it's all there. You just have to go through it. It is a click, 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 next, next, next kind of thing, and you deploy it in here for yourself in order to get it started. It's really simple. Again, actions, tags, you just review and create here, and it'll create. Now, again, I'm going to show you the portal here as we go along, but these are screenshots, so you can take these back and take a look and see how and where we got to this. If we look at the blade right here, where I did in the first screen, you'll see that metrics is highlighted. Right above that is our alerts. So that's how I got to that particular thing. So everything with monitoring is going to be in this little section on the right left-hand side of your blade. So again, here's your alerts. Here's everything that we would want to have. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to do it very briefly because this is the new one, and I know we're going to go through this part fast so we can get into the portal. So bear with me here. Brand new database watcher, just introduced, and it is actually going to be a fleet-wide. I'm very excited about this. Once I figure out how to set it up easily, it's going to be good. Once I figure out how much it's going to cost me, it's going to be even better. So we're going to have to take some time to start to play with this. I know there are a couple speakers out there that are already starting to work with this. I saw last week at SQL Saturday Atlanta, there was a database watcher session that was given. So I'm really excited about what's coming with this, and I'll definitely be attending those. But it's going to give us everything about the health that we would get like in a third-party monitoring tool, and it's going to be fleet-wide. So I'm extremely excited. They're giving us a lot of different roles to allow us to see this information. I've got the roles listed here on the slide. It's covering everything that we would want from the important DMVs. You know, all the good performance tuning stuff that comes with like Glenn Berry's DMVs that give us, you know, all of our weights and how much IO information we have and all kinds of information straight from that. That's where they're pulling it from. They're not generating it anywhere else. They're pulling straight out of SQL Server. We'll be able to get to it directly through the DMVs or see it in the database monitor, database watcher. It's going to be using Azure Data Explorer. Now, Azure Data Explorer is what we're going to do to actually dive in to those analytics. We're going to have to learn some things like KQL and build some custom visualizations. All of that information is going to be able to be pushed into Power BI and Grafana and pull it down to Excel. There's going to be some really great things in there for us to do. Of course, we're going to have to learn more when it comes to wanting to analyze that, but they're going to give us everything that we've wanted in the portal and give us something that we might not have to go to those third-party tools anymore. It's going to be built in, and I think it's a long time coming, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to do with this. I'm hesitant when it comes to cost. It says you can actually monitor 50 targets and have 20 different watchers, 20 different database watcher configurations within a subscription. But what exactly that's going to cost, I'm not quite sure. Hopefully there's going to be some things that are included and it's not going to be as much as I'm thinking, but I'm kind of waiting and seeing. So I'd be interested as everybody starts to get into this, what kind of things kind of pop up when it comes, because we all know anything in Azure isn't free. So I'm very interested, like I said, to see how this is going to transpire. So let's take a look a little bit about this. You end up with a watcher database, and it's going to pull in all of your information from all of your targets into one source. It's going to create and feed a data store to you, and you can push that, like I said, to a dashboard, which I'm about to show you, and or an analytics platform. So if you already are using Capewell right now to pull things out, or you're using Power BI or Grafana, or something like Datadog. I love Datadog. If you've got something like that where you actually pull out all of your analytics, it's still going to be available for you there. So they're making sure they can incorporate everything that you might need for that. Here is an example. Forgive me as I'm sharing you this screen over here. So if I'm tilting my head, that's where we are. But here's an example where they have those lovely different metrics down here. It's hooked to an Azure SQL database. You can pull things by CPU, IO, workers, log rights, weights, all of this great stuff, in which you can display again in our normal red, green, yellow alerting type colors that pop out and tell us if we have any problems within any part of our fleet, our environment. We'll be able to click into these and get deep dives into each one of these metrics that we have actually set up. We'll be able to do this for time ranges. We'll be able to dig in and look. When's the last time we've pulled data? What tables is it pulling the data from? How long the latency is going to be on some of this? How much rows are in here? There is going to be a lot of really great information, including stuff on our Elastic pools, top queries, all of that great stuff in one place. I'm really excited to see how it's doing that. There is a question here. It says, do you have to schedule or trigger a pipeline in order to get the information out? That's a really good question. I don't know. If you do it that way, that's updating statistics manually. Yes. So somebody's already answering the questions. That's good. I'm trying to see what you guys have going on in the chat here. So here is where your first stop is. This is a dashboard. Again, it's going to give you all the red, yellow, green. I'm a little worried about the red, yellow, green for those that are visually impaired. I still don't think they've gone through and made sure that this is going to be advantageous for everyone, but you know, things are going to evolve. So here's our beginning dashboard. We can customize all of that. And this is when we dig in. We can dig in and actually see the same kind of things we saw in the metrics, right? That first couple graphs here is what you can create in metrics. So I think they've just brought that piece in. But we'll be able to see the CPU load, your workers, as you can see here, work requested, your weights, the weight stuff at the bottom is all what we care about at big time, right? We want to know what's going on, what our weights are. Do we have CPU issues? Do we have latency issues, write issues? What type of things do we need to go ahead and start to dig into? Once we find those things and the waiting task, they have a waiting task here, we can dig into the queries. You can see that they have the top queries in here. They're bringing storage, tables, indexes. All of our replica information is in here. There is going to be some really great information that you pull. Now, this one right here was brought in as a visualization inside Azure workbooks. I have never used Azure workbooks in this instance, so I can't wait to see what everybody does with the information that they pull out. So that's what it's going like. That's hopefully going to be what we're going to start to see in the future. I have a feeling it's going to evolve, and we'll start to see what everybody else does and customizes it. I'm guessing there's going to be some templates that are going to be available for everybody to start using and get us going. So waiting to see. Here is the question about the pricing. I pulled it straight from online. So you can see, I recommend before you turn any of this on and start to get it started, that you read this in detail so there is no surprise billing that comes through. Knowing too that when you're using other things to use your database, to pull in the analytics of your database, Power BI, the real-time analytics that gets fed to it, and the Data Explorer, all of that information, we get charged for those things. So that'll be on top of database watchers. It's your consumer and how you're visualizing it. So keep that in mind as you start to throw more and more data into that. So take a look. The pricing is out there. and see how it works out for you. Hopefully they want to make this available to everyone. So I'm hoping this is not going to be something that we're going to end up having to go back and turn off or fix, like I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, of something that you can turn on to get really good information and make a big mistake to cause a big bill. So I'm hoping Database Watcher will be a little bit different. But it's out there, it's brand new. So take a look. Okay, any questions before I go to the next part? Tayeb, are we good?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, perfect. All right, so by now, everybody knows what Query Store is. I'm hoping. It came out in 2016. It's one of the most important things ever to come out in SQL Server when it comes to performance tuning. I love it. I know Depthy was registered for this one. I know she loves it. I know Erin loves it. I live and breathe inside Query Store. And it's no different when it goes to the cloud. There's a couple caveats that we need to know, and there's a couple different places we're going to look when it comes to Query Store, but it's essential when it comes to performance tuning inside the cloud as well. So just a quick overview, what is it? Query Store is everything that's capturing all of our runtime statistics for our queries. We've got our execution plans, we have regressions, we have the top resources. We can look at our entire database on a database level, queries that are coming through over time, and then look and see what their historical runtimes were. We can see what our overall consumption for queries are in our environment, such as over the last month. What does our CPU utilization normally look like? What is our I/O that goes through? Logical reads, physical reads. We can see all of that and easily find anomalies when it comes to performance tuning and our query workloads. Same thing in the cloud. It is on by default when you go to Azure SQL Database in the newer versions. And with SQL 2022, it is going to be on by default. Right now, you have to turn it on yourself if you are not on those versions to make sure you are grabbing the information like the wait stats. So important when it comes to analyzing your workload. So once you turn it on, it starts to capture your workload as it comes through on a repeatable, and it will give you all the information that we're going to need to find problems inside SQL Server. Now, hopefully you have this on and looking at the screen is not unfamiliar to you, but I want you to know when I'm coming in as a consultant, I know you're in Azure SQL Database. Right now, I only have availability to your cloud portal. I can easily find issues in your environment just from this one screen. So let's take a look and see where it gives us. I am on my Azure SQL Database on a primary of an Azure SQL Database, and I will look on my left-hand side. Right above the monitoring blade, there is an intelligence performance blade. This is very important to the work that I do. And I'm going to go into query performance insights. That's where you're going to find the Query Store information that is going to be actionable to you, that's going to give you the biggest detail on performance, what's causing your high CPU, what's causing, what's the execution counts, why am I getting so many log reads? You're going to be able to identify those queries just in the portal. And you can actually use that as a breadcrumb to Scooby-Doo off into SSMS or and actually dig farther inside a Query Store if you want to. So let's take a look. Here's a beautiful graph that it gives us. Right now, this is resource consuming queries. Then I've got some long running queries, and then I can customize this a little bit. But I usually keep it on resource consuming queries because I want to know what's using my CPU, for example. Here, it's going to give me the top 5 queries by CPU. Hopefully that's very clear here. You can customize your time period. And then you can actually customize how it gives the metrics, total, average, etc. Here, I'm showing CPU right now. You can clearly see just from this graph, I know nothing about your workload. I know that during this period right here where I have a big giant spike and a red bar, we had a problem. This was my highest consuming 14%, 15% of my CPU happened just from this one thing. And as I go along, it looks like it's an anomaly compared to the rest of this time frame that I'm looking at. So right then and there, I have somebody that calls me up and says, hey, a few minutes ago or a couple hours ago, or it looks like, oh no, it was 7 o'clock last night, things started to run slow. Can you look and tell me what went on last night? I don't know. I'm not going back to the future to figure out what it is, but Query Store does it for me. So I can go here, looking straight at here, I pop open Query Performance Insights. I find the big giant bar. It's not rocket science. It's in my face. Big giant bar, red right here. Here was our highest CPU consumer. And that correlates to a query. If you look down below, it tells you right here, query ID is listed. This was the CPU. This is the total consumption of the CPU that it did. And there was 170 executions that occurred during that window of time. It's very, very easy to find out what our biggest problem was. It's not rocket science, like I said. So if you want to go and look at these metrics, this is what I pay attention to. Regardless of what's up here, it's easy to see and sort what was our highest CPU query, what was our highest data IO, what ran for the longest. Now, in Query Store, this is an aggregation. That is not a one-off query run that took an hour and 33 minutes. What this is an aggregation in that time window that is set inside Query Store. It could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour, depending on, it could be 15 minutes, depending on what interval you have set inside your Query Store configuration. But right here, during that query window time that we have up here, I had 170 executions for this query. So 2049733. So the next thing to do is say, okay, what was that query? It's so easy. All I have to do is click on the red bar or click on that query ID down below, and it's going to bring up the actual query. As you can see, it's that same query ID. And if you're anything like me and you tuning all the time and you're living in Query Store, you probably have a piece of paper and you're going to jot down this query ID number so you can jump in and Scooby-Doo a little farther into SSMS to get more information. But right here, I know nothing about your environment. But I do know you probably use Entity Framework. I know that only because all of these variables start with P, P1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up. You're probably creating this query Entity Framework. We know when it's Entity Framework, we run into all kinds of problems. So there's no surprise there. So I'll note the query ID. And then because this is showing me just for this query over the last 24 hours, I can see during the windows where the high times were, and it gives me the details of that interval window. So really that 16% CPU that we saw on that bar was a duration of a 46-minute run between the 8 p.m. and the 9 p.m. hour. There were 85 executions during that time. Well, that's where you start to ask the question, right? Is 85 an anomaly? Did they just run it a lot, so therefore it was our largest consumer of CPU? Or does it usually run faster, and we've got to go and dig in for some kind of regression, right? So these are the kind of things that we'll start to ask questions, but the portal will give us what we need to know to dig further. So we want to pay attention here to the IO and the CPU. And one thing to keep in mind is this executions is a big one. We all know death by 1,000 cuts, right? I can have a really, really fast query that runs in milliseconds or a second, and that's fast for us. But if they execute it 1,000,000 times in a 15-minute window, that's going to consume a heck of a lot of CPU. Or we have a function. If this was an example of a function, maybe this function ran row by row on a really large table, and that's not supposed to happen. So somebody put in a loop or there's something that went wrong within that. This will give us the indication of the death by 1,000 cuts as well, if we're paying attention to those execution counts. So just right in the portal, it makes it very, very easy for us to identify those. Any questions before we move on to the next part?
There's a comment by Mark Freeman. So the smallest time range is 2 hours. If there was a problem for a few minutes, averaging makes it hard to find.
That is inside Query Store. That is a setting that you can change. And when we get over to SSMS, I'll show you. Your window can actually be a 15-minute window. You could do it to 5-minute window. You can gather these stats as much as you want to. Although you're creating extra overhead and you might be gathering them a little too much. I say a 15 to 30-minute window is a good block. I don't know that there's a 2-hour small range. If you're talking about the range of collecting the information, I don't know that that is a true statement because you can make those interval changes. And I'll show you when we get into SSMS. So maybe that's something that you can adjust in your environment if you want to get that lower.
There's another question. I just read this here before you go to the next section. Can you still search query ID with query text or query substring like on premises using DMVs?
Yes. Yes, the same stuff that you can do on premises, you can still find in your Query Store queries that you're using to pull by that query ID. You can still do the same thing for Azure SQL Database. Nothing different. It's just we're going to hop into SSMS to do so. There's some things you can get to the portal and some things you can't. Range limit of 2 hours in the UI regardless. Oh, you're talking about in the portal UI that you can only get when you go to customize. I believe you're talking about here when you do customize and you're trying to find the 2 hour here. Is that what you're talking about? Yes. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about that. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's nothing you can do on that piece.
Okay, you're
But you
good to go,
can,
Monica.
yeah, you can hop into SSMS and we can get to all of that. Okay, let's move over, and I just want to caution you. So read replicas. As of right now, when it comes to Query Store, if you're going into the portal, and I'll show you this too, if you have a read replica that allows you to have reporting off of your primary database, which is fantastic when it comes to offloading your big giant reports off of your transactional database, you've moved it over to a read replica for your users to pull information. That's fantastic. However, when the user says my report is running slow, or this query is not doing as fast as it used to be, and you want to go directly to the thing that I told you about, this Query Store piece, it is actually showing you the primary workload. So it gets very, very frustrating when you need to actually offload that information and you want to tune and you're within the portal only and you're trying to find all this great information that Query Store gives you. You're going to get an exact picture of your primary's workload here, and you're not going to be able to do anything with it. Now, in 2022, thank goodness, we're going to get a Query Store on a secondary replica that will give us all the information about the workload and feed it back to our primary so we can do some analysis of it. It is in preview. I have not had it installed on my environments from what I'm being able to use in my clients yet. So I don't have an example for you on this, but you'll be able to actually, it's like I said, it's still in preview. So you're actually be able to see that Query Store workload. It is gathered on the secondary, pushed to the primary because the secondary is still a read only. When it comes to your Query Store, it pushes it to the primary and you're able to differentiate what's the primary and the secondary within your Query Store and get a little more information on that. So I'm really happy about that. I'm waiting for all the kinks to be out before I'm truly using it. Hopefully, maybe you know somebody that's actually using it and successful with it. I do not at this point, but I'm very, very glad that it's going to happen. So on top of Query Store, there is more information we need when we're actually monitoring and performance tuning our Azure SQL databases, right? When it comes to being a DBA, we care about query performance, obviously, but we also care about timeouts. We want to know where to find those deadlocks. We want to know where the blocking is happening. We want to know anything that we can find in order to figure out what is happening in our environment. Obviously, we're going to get a call and say my report won't return, or things aren't running, or the screen is frozen, or everything else like that. And we want to find out if blocking is the cause. When we looked at those metrics so far, we don't see any of that. And that kind of thing is really important when it comes to tuning and being able to monitor our environment. So before Database Watcher, and still now, it still says, or it did say, not GA yet, it's in public preview, and now it says deprecated. But we can still use it. It says deprecated because they're moving all of their resources over to Database Watcher. But this is something right now that you can use, you can set up. It works. I've used it for lots of clients, and it's going to give you that missing piece that you need in order to performance tune inside Azure SQL Database. So it's under, I'm going to show you inside the portal, but it's going to rely on log analytics. It's another piece outside of Azure SQL Database that you have to turn on, point it to your database, and start gathering information. When you gather information and you store it and need to analyze it, that comes with money. So you have to pay attention to what you're turning on and what you're gathering for it to be useful and worth the money. But this is how you actually get all of that information that you need when it comes to the errors, the weights, the log, the blocking, and all of that good stuff. So again, there's an extra cost. And if you want to analyze it more than just visually, which I'm going to show you on the next screen, you'll have to learn the KQL language and start to figure out how you go and mine that data. You can use that same KQL for database watcher information. So it's going to be useful in the future as well. You can have multiple databases writing to one analytic space. So that's when you start to look at your fleet. Again, this is the predecessor that to go to Database Watcher. So let's take a look at everything you can see like we have on the screen right here. It looks like this. This is one particular Azure SQL database. It will actually show me the fleet if I have multiple databases as part of this. It'll show me all my query timeouts. It'll show me waits. It shows me my blocking. It shows me all of my time waiting, and we can dig into every single one of these graphs and get the meat and the detail of what's causing it, such as the blocking. You want to know what blocking is happening? I could click onto this orange line in the blocking here on the right-hand side at the bottom. It will tell me the two statements that are blocking, and we can start to dig and fix those things. If you have queries that are timing out, you can click into each one of these things and dig into the detail of your entire fleet to see what's going on and be able to make adjustments or whatever you have to do to make the fixes and the performance tuning inside your environment. So this is a really great tool when we were doing overall views of our current state prior to Database Watcher. If you're not into a Database Watcher state yet, we aren't really because it's so new to everybody, this is what you need to turn on. This is the missing link that most people do not have on that wish they did. So we'll walk through that here in a minute. There's some other things coming up, or it's actually in there now, which will actually be expanded even more as you start to use Copilot. There are places where you can diagnose and solve some of your problems. If you're a new DBA, you're a manager, you're not quite sure how to fix things inside Azure, if you go underneath your SQL database, you will see diagnose and solve problems. It'll allow you to troubleshoot your connections. It'll allow you to troubleshoot any of the maintenance or metrics or alerts in the monitoring. It'll help you set that kind of stuff up. It'll look at your performance query executions. It's just using Query Store in the background, and it's bringing things up to the front for you to look at if you're not quite sure to where to look. It'll look over your failover groups. You can go into your backups and restores. You can check all the information and walk through a troubleshooting scenario. So let's say you're a manager, you're not quite sure, or your DBA took a vacation for once. You know, we would all like to do that. You want to figure out what's going on with the environment because things are slow. You can tell them about the problem. Performance and query executions are my problem. It'll kind of tell you what kind of problem are you having. It'll allow you to do a next. And what is it going to do? It's going to bring up the stuff that it already has in your portal, but it's going to give it to you in one place that will make sense. So in this case, when we say there's high CPU going on, it'll bring up the actual metric and graph from the high CPU. It'll bring up, if you look down at the other errors here, it's going to find the highest CPU queries. Well, where is it getting that information? That's from Query Insights, i.e. Query Store. So it's not giving us any intelligence. It's actually just giving us a view of everything in one place and where we should be looking. It's giving us the breadcrumbs to follow. Now, keep in mind when you do things like Copilot and things like that, as this starts to evolve and you start to use it, it's only revealing the stuff behind the scenes for you to do the analysis. It's pointing out some things. It's not giving you intelligent answers where it's analyzing you and telling you exactly what to do per se. So make sure you're using it as a guide. And this is a guide. That's how it started off. And we'll be evolving more into the Copilot piece here. But it's really good when you're not sure where to look or you're the accidental DBA that needs to get started in the portal. We all have to start somewhere. This is a good place to start, in my opinion. So easy to find, easy to walk through, click, 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 ask questions. And it can check out some of your configurations, lots of different things that's available to you in this. If you haven't played around with it, I suggest you do. You might learn a thing or two or notice something that you might not have set up that you didn't realize in Azure SQL Database, you still have to. So good stuff. Now let's go into the lazy DBA automatic tuning. This is the piece where management seems to say, hey, they even give us automatic tuning. They're going to fix our problems for us on the fly. They're going to give us new indexes. They're going to get rid of duplicate indexes. They're going to force some plans for us. I no longer need my DBA because everybody's doing it for me inside the portal. That's what we're paying for. That's wrong. Don't do that. What this is again, giving us information and giving us the ability to be actionable on it or have it be actionable on it. Rule 1 is Microsoft says do no harm. So when they put these things in, such as a create index, and they automatically create an index for you, they're going to do some testing with it. They're going to go through and validate that it's a good change. They're going to execute it. They're going to revert it if it wasn't a good thing. But during that time, you might feel a performance hit, and or it might have been something that they suggested to drop because it hasn't been used for a while, but you really need this for a big report that runs monthly. There's things that this doesn't inherently know, so you have to be cautious when you allow automatic things to happen to your environment. Does that mean that you can't take advantage of it? No. What's really great about these is that you can turn these on and it will give you the suggestion. So you can go and it'll say, create a new index. And when you create a new index, instead of saying it to automatically apply the index, it can give you the scripts and a list of scripts of suggestions in which you as a DBA can go and follow and decide whether you want to pull that script and execute it and take advantage of what it's asking. Same with the drop index. I would never allow them to drop an index without me evaluating that. Hopefully that's true for you as well. You can see the force plan. I'm all about forcing the plan. I'm good with that. So I would recommend in my view is that you use the force plan. That's automatic plan correction, right? If it sees a regression happening in your environment, a different plan came through that's not as optimal as the previous plan, go ahead and allow it to force the previous plan. It can make that change for you so you can get some sleep and not have to pause your show or whatever you want to go force a plan because things are running longer. Allow it to do that. But having these off, create index and drop index, is in my opinion very important. When these first came out, they had the create index on by default, and not a big fan for that because you can't change the naming conventions and it can create easily double duplicate indexes, all of that good stuff. So they ended up changing that default to off, which I was very happy about. So if I go in and I actually have these set to on, set to off, it's still evaluating my workload and it will keep suggestions in there for 24 to 48 hours. And you can actually go to those suggestions and do some reviews and decide what you want to do as far as adding the index or not adding the index. You'll see here it says performance recommendations. That's where you will go under intelligent performance to see those recommendations and see if that missing index makes sense or dropping that duplicate index makes sense for your environment. Again, they don't know your full workload. They're giving suggestions based on metrics that the engine has ingested and or used and when determining these. Any questions on this? Yes, Mark, that's my biggest problem. It will automatically create overlapping indexes. Yes, 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 yes. We all know this is one of my biggest pet peeves, and a Copilot does the same thing. So be aware of this. What happens is these type of things are reading the missing missing indexes, DMVs. So when you go to an execution plan and you see that green text that says missing index, or you go to the DMV and it has all the missing indexes, this is the same thing. Copilot, it's the same thing. So we all know as we've gone along in our careers that when it gives us a missing index, it gives us in the key order is going to be in table field order. So if you have a table that has table field 1, 2, and 3, every time it gets a suggestion, it'll be in order of 1, 2, and 3, even though you want the second field to come first. And it really wants the second field to come first. It will always list the fields in that order. So you can get overlapping indexes very easily. You can get indexes that are in the wrong order that causes scans versus seeks, and you end up reading a lot more pages. One of the reasons why you don't necessarily want to take advantage of any of the missing indexes that are given to us in this format or others without a lot of review. So definitely not turning them on by default. I appreciate that comment for sure, Mark. Okay, so let's go into a demo. I am going to switch over here to the portal. Can everybody see this?
Yes, we can see it. Okay. Monica, you have 12 minutes, so I don't interrupt you. You're gonna 10 minutes.
Perfect. I think that's gonna work out. All right, so if anybody's not been into the portal, we call these blades on the left-hand side. Here is my recent services here, and here are all of my resources. Everything is a resource, whether it is an analytics workspace, a SQL database, a VM, it can be a server itself, any kind of alert. Each one of these is a resource. So what we care about today is an Azure SQL Database. So I'm going to go over to Azure SQL Database. I can go here from my blade, or since I've gone here recently, it's going to be up here on top. I have two different Azure SQL Database. You can see one is a geo replica, and you have my other one is the primary here. So when I click into this, it gives me all the information regarding my Azure SQL database. This is the way it starts out, but what I care about is what we talked about earlier, monitoring, right? First thing I want to look at is metrics. I can go here and I can look at, just dropping it down, this is SQL Database Standard Metrics. I'm going to be looking at CPU. Let's look at our CPU. Boom, CPU's on there. I can go to add the metric and pick another one. I'm going to go and pick, I don't know, IO. There's my IO line. And then I want to make it max. I want to see the max IO. And then I'm going to hit add again. And then all of a sudden we're building and we're getting a really good picture of what our workload is. It's very simple. You can just go and find your deadlocks. You can see everything that you could possibly want when it comes to temp DB sizes. I mean, everything's here that you could want. So the thing is to take advantage of it, take some time to build it, save it to a dashboard. You can pin it to Grafana. You can actually have a workbook. You can pin it to a dashboard that's shared with your entire company or department. Changing the time metrics, this is what I talked about. 48 days is going to be your kicker. That's when things are going to fall off. If you like to have everything in UTC, we can switch it to UTC, and you can actually apply that change and change the interval, hit save to dashboard, and there you go. We can drill in to all the information. We can create alerts. There's a lot of really great things that you can do here. You just have to take the time to set it up. Yes, you're going to set it up for each and every SQL database that you have to build the database when using this piece right here. Here is where I found the alerts. If I want to set up any alerts, I'm going to create them here. It's going to start to build me a little dashboard of all the alerts that have happened. And we can put in some actions. We can start to notify people of these. It's all the same kind of stuff you'd want, that 10-to-1 you had to build inside SQL Agent or a third-party monitoring tool. It's all in the portal. Now, let's continue on. When I said that we wanted to look at, let me skip that first. We're going to go to the other piece here in a second. Let's look at the query store information. That is under, where did it go? Where is it? I'm sorry. Query performance insights. There we go. One of the things, I'm working in AWS right now, and I got to tell you, Azure far beyond better than AWS's front end. I will give you that, Microsoft. I totally missed this. So under intelligent query, intelligent performance, this is your query performance insights. This is the query store view that I was telling you about in the very beginning. You can see your workload over the time here. You can see your CPU that we're currently at. You can highlight over each one of these, and it's going to correlate to a query ID. So again, color coded, right? Here is red. Here's the query that's red. Here's green. Here's the query that's green. And we can actually see here very simply what was our highest CPU consumer. Not only do we see that visually, but I can tell down here in the chart. This is the same thing that I have. Remember, it's on an interval. Now let's dig in. What is this red one? When I click into the red one, I'm going to get the actual query that's running on my database that's causing all the CPU churn. I can go and copy the text out and send it off to my developer and say, hey, this query is causing me problems. These are the run times broken down by the time frame we are looking at. This right here makes it extremely easy, and unfortunately, this is not a great visual for what I'm trying to tell you, is that if I had a regression, this is a very quick place to spot it. Let's say that this one right here was running in a duration of 1.5 minutes. And then the next one, it goes to 10 minutes. Obviously, that hour was going longer than the previous hour. Maybe I had a regression in a query plan. I would be able to use that and see that difference very clearly and hop over to SSMS and or do some other Scooby-Dooing and investigation to figure out that mystery. So it's all right here. It's in one place. If you went to recommendations, if there was a missing index, again, they are looking at the missing index DMV. They pull that information here. I do have this on right now, so there was a success that it actually applied an index to this. So that is actually on, and that's what it did. So we have this in here. Let's go back. And so now back inside Performance Insights, This is again where we'll see the death by 1,000 cuts. If we start to notice queries are taking a lot more or doing a lot more executions than normal, this will be a place to do it. I can customize, I can go to long running queries. Where are my longest running queries? So you can easily grab those and then start to dig in and figure out what you need to do to tune those, or you hand them off to the developer or what have you, an index needs to be added, or the normal tuning stuff that we're going to do. It's all right here. So that makes it easy to figure out what each one of these queries are, do something about it. Here's another one, and you can see it running over time. I have an automated workload on here, so there's no big variations, but you can find everything that you need, and you can take those query IDs again and hop right back over to SSMS. Let's actually SSMS and start to dig further. And of course, I don't have my piece of paper in that query ID, but let me pull one so that I could easily just copy this. And then when we go into SSMS, I can copy and paste and we can look up more on that. So from here, let's go and look at where we set up all of those good deadlock and blocking information that everybody's missing. I want to make sure we cover that before we run out of time. So that is actually under diagnostic settings. So to get to this, you have to have a log analytics workspace set up. That's the first step. In order to get these wonderful metrics, you have to store it somewhere, and that's going to be a log analytics workspace. So first you create your workspace, and then you want to go on your Azure SQL Database diagnostic settings, and you're going to add a diagnostic setting. I have one created already. It's going to this analytics workspace. I hit edit, and this is where you choose what you want to capture. Your subscription that you're billing it to, obviously, because they want to bill you, the storage account, the storage that you're going to actually put the information to, and what you want to choose. So I'm going to get timeouts, blocks, errors, what have you. The only thing I tell you not to do is don't click this audit button. Auditing will give you a lot of detail in every single statement that's being pulled, potentially, which means lots of money. So as soon as you turn that on, it's very hard to turn off. So I stay away from this completely unless you're going through an auditing thing where you're specifically being asked for that. Don't turn it on because it's a lot of money. Turn these on. When you turn those on and you hit save, you're going to be able to see your environment like this. This is the analytics, Azure Analytics preview. This is the thing that's going to be deprecated, and it will give us what I showed you in that screenshot, your weights, your database time. If you have more than one database, it will show you all the information, your CX packet weights, the duration of every query. You get the execution plan. You get all of your blockings and any errors. If there's an error in somebody's code where string is getting truncated or an object's not there, you're going to see all that information, all your great metrics. And you can actually get this to where you can break it down for each one of your Azure SQL databases in one place. So it's very, very useful until you get to Database Watcher. This is where you're going to want to be. Now, how do you get to it? It's under Analytics Workspaces. I'm sorry, we're going to step back. It's going to be, I'm trying to get you to your blade. When you go to the logs here, you will see, it's not there, crap. I forgot. These things get hidden, and you've got to find where the heck they put it.
The logs one under monitoring, the fourth one.
Is it?
Under monitoring. For the logs.
Oh, the logs. You said under logs monitoring?
Yeah. Are you trying to get to the log analytics workspace?
No, the workspace itself.
Yeah, so if you can go from different, this will take you there, or you can search your workspace name on the top and you can go from there. No, on the center of the page.
Center of the page.
No,
see,
like
this is the problem with the portal. Finding stuff is.
No, just where it says search resources, services, and docs. If you know your log analytics workspace name, just put it there. No, Monica, not there. On the top, right on your.
Here.
No, yeah, right there. Yep.
Yeah, well, here's my workspace right here.
Okay, yeah, that's it. So you have it there.
We should find them. And it's actually under work. I was looking for this work summary. Yeah, so log analytics. I was looking for this work summary deprecated. That's where you find it. It says deprecated. It used to say preview. But once you go there, you'll see everything you could watch. And then you click into Azure SQL Databases, and there we started. So you're right, log analytics workspace. I got into the log analytics workspace, and it's under here, the workspace summary. And that's until Database Watcher comes up and you've got that turned on and set up. So it is 3:59. I know that was fast, everybody. I know we did not get to this wonderful Azure SQL database here inside SSMS. It is exactly the same that you would expect when you do an on-prem query store. I'm just connected to my Azure SQL database. Nothing looks different. I can get to query store just like I did. I can track queries and pull that query ID over and pull it. I can run those DMVs that we have for Query Store and pull all the information just like I do on Prem. I have all of that. It's a matter for you to Scooby-Doo through and solve those mysteries, but starting at the portal is how you're going to work down and find things quickly. So I know everybody's busy, you're back at work, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. You do have the slide deck. I apologize for it to being so fast. It's a lot to go through. So I appreciate everybody who stuck through it. Definitely walk through the slide deck, look at those screenshots, and make sure that you're able to follow it. Is there anything for Database Watcher on-prem? I don't know. I haven't played with it enough. I want to say it's going to be very cloud oriented. I don't think that it's going to suck everything up from on-prem because that's a lot of data moving. But I don't know that for sure. Definitely look out there at the documentation. It's going to evolve. I'm guessing they want a piece of that third-party monitoring that everybody uses. They want to be able to do it inside. So I would guess maybe. We'll have to wait and see. Thanks. Anybody else have any questions?
It's up to you. There are a couple of questions came in. Are there any changes to rebuilding or reorganizing indexes?
You want to continue with that. So all the maintenance that you do where you rebuild and reorganize indexes and you maintain your statistics, it's the same thing. It's a database workload, right? All of that is important for us to get the best execution plans possible and the fastest workloads. So yes, that is still very pertinent.
Any best practices tips for the log analytics retention to maximize value and minimize cost?
Yeah, just don't hit that audit button. Everything else is good. Definitely the deadlocks, the blocking, the errors, all of that. You can turn that on. Minimize cost, it won't be that much. But when you turn that audit on, it's going to nail you. So don't do that.
You saw per database. I have 4 managed instances, I believe this gentleman is saying. With 100 databases, I have to do this 100 times.
Manage, yes. So you can use CLI, you can automate this. If that's the question, you can do different things to set this up. And PowerShell as well, and automate all of that setup. You just need to know what you have to set up and what to connect to.
Yeah, I think those are pretty much, viewer says, thank you. Yeah, can DB Watcher be used in SQL Server hosted in Azure Virtual Machine? I think no, but I'll let you answer that. I think he's saying if SQL Server running,
yeah. Yeah, if you're using Azure Arc. I'm just curious of how that money is going to be. I just don't know. You know, reading that price doesn't give us a ton of information. So I don't know. Yes, you can use OLA. You can still use jobs in Azure SQL Database. You can use Elastic jobs. You can use functions to run things. There's ways to use, we use OLA still too. All of the great things, you just have to do it someplace else that's not SQL Agent. So start to look in some of those Azure functions and things like that.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording. Everyone, thank you. I'm going to upload this recording by end of the weekend. And Monica, thank you again.
You're welcome.
And yeah, if anyone has any questions or follow-up, send it to me, dba-vug@outlook.com, and I'll make sure I'll follow up and answer your question. And